Hi, everybody. I'm Jordi. I'm the founder of Selini. We are a venture investor and trading firm. Mert, you want to give a quick intro?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Mert. I am very loud on Twitter, and I run a company called Helius, which is infrastructure for Solana.
So, for those of you who are on Twitter, crypto Twitter, over the last year, you must have seen the force of nature that is Mert. I feel like the Solana ecosystem has been pushed through sheer force and power of will into the behemoth it is today. So what I want to do, over the next 19 minutes is talk a little bit about the past and a little bit about the future. One is what can we learn about Solana's amazing success story coming back from the depths of FTX. I think $8 into now the huge success. And also looking forward, some predictions and some understanding. Maybe we can talk about meme coins a little bit, and also what other future use cases we might see emerge. But let's start backwards. So 2022, obviously, SPF was a core sort of part of that ecosystem that fell, and somehow a lot of people, including yourself, had so much belief that Solana was going to survive and thrive despite that mess. Can you take us back and tell us what that was like, that period, the bear?
Yeah, so for those unfamiliar, FTX and SPF was a big backer of Solana very early on, and people tend to forget how early that was. It was actually around 2020. And since then, they had actually started investing in other ecosystems. And the last thing they released was a pretty underwhelming NFT marketplace. And so by the time he went, let's say, bankrupt, Solana was already self-sustaining, but that simply wasn't the narrative on Twitter, because Sam is certainly a character with his tweets, some of which are a little profane. And when that happened, my first reaction was, this is awesome, because now there's nobody left to dump on people's heads when there's a new venture round. And so I was excited, but needless to say, Twitter was not. And so we're engineers at Helius, and what we focused on was, okay, fundamentally, blockchains are systems that need to work in the real world, right? Community, narrative, etc. only takes so much, but the tech actually needs to work. And if you had been following along, you would have seen that it was still the fastest, cheapest, and with a ruthless focus on user experience. And it was not easy, but simple to tell that story, right? When activity comes on again in a year, 5 years, whatever, then Solana will be prime location for retail, but also any user who's not even familiar with crypto to do transactions on chain with Phantom Wallet, Jupiter, things like this, and that's what ended up happening.
I mean, money moves where the least resistance is, like you said, fastest, cheapest transactions. The casino that we've seen get built on Solana with Pump Fun and the cats versus dogs and all these other animal coins, everything else happening. It's from what you're saying, based on having that focus on UX, where obviously Ethereum could have had the same activity, and also the capital was already there. I remember the TVL in Solana was super low after everything that happened. I mean, it had even the USDC on Solana was 100 mil or something. It was tiny, I think, at some point.
Yeah, it was surpassed by just about all the chains. It kept dropping below all the major assets in price, but also TVL, volume, and everybody thought it was dead. But what you had to do was actually look at the number of developers, which fundamentally those are the ones who end up building the things that people use when the next cycle comes along.
And can you take us a little bit into the Solana culture? I mean, there seem to be a lot of people that are very loyal, very active users of Solana versus Ethereum. They don't want to. Is it that's considered a boomer chain, and this is the cool thing, or what? Take us a little bit into the culture side.
Sure. So if you're familiar with Solana or Anatoly, you'll know that his vision for Solana is basically NASDAQ on chain. So decentralized NASDAQ. And everything revolves around that simple message of let's bring markets on chain, make them global on one giant chain so that everybody can access it at the same time without any bridging and all these other sorts of UX hurdles. And everything revolves around that. And also Solana is founded by basically Silicon Valley, San Francisco types. And they tend to have a very big focus on move fast, ship to prod, iterate, and focus a lot on users, as opposed to some of the other more research-oriented chains. And I mean, both are good approaches, but that just tends to be Solana's based on its founding story and the ethos of the core team.
And it's very interesting because you have the, like you said, the San Francisco tech, NASDAQ vibe. And then you have this like Vegas vibe of, first it was NFTs last cycle where Solana was, for some reason, I guess because of the cheap cost, a lot of NFTs were getting flipped. This cycle, I think it's more around meme coins at this point, and that seems to be like, again, getting that activity. I guess the question is, will we start having non-speculative use cases, and what are you seeing on other things like DePIN and like, you know, outside of the casino, what else is getting built?
Yeah, so two things around that. Basically, every single crypto cycle so far has been driven by one main speculative driver. So at first, perhaps it was Bitcoin, and then perhaps it was the ICOs, and then NFTs, and then meme coins. And Solana currently tends to be the best place to move those assets. And fundamentally, from a tech perspective, it doesn't matter what the token is called. It just matters that it's a token. And what I mean by that is if you focus on being able to handle the trading of thousands of tokens through DEXs, but also the wallet infrastructure, all the way down to the communities, and basically how the ethos of the chain works, then it's very natural to extend that to other types of tokens. So RWAs, stablecoins, NFTs. And on Solana, one thing that is very underrated, but I think it's the coolest use case in all of crypto, and that's going to be DePIN, decentralized physical infra networks. So things like Helium, which is not to be confused with Helius. It is.
Did you ever kind of try to change the name, or like it's so similar?
I did. So I was on Solana first, and then they migrated over, but they are much bigger. So now I can't change it due to Google penalizing me on SEO. But so if you don't know what Helium is, it's decentralized mobile networks. So basically you have a device where you hang up in your office or your balcony or something like this, and it provides internet coverage to people, and you earn tokens for doing this, but then people can consume that internet and be part of that network. And there's a lot of ideas similar to that. Another one is a company called HiveMapper, which is actually the biggest competitor to Google Maps, where everybody already drives every single day. And so what you do is you put a dash cam on your car, and it maps the world on its own. And while it's doing that, you earn tokens for mapping unexplored parts of the world. And what you get is a much fresher map. But also, the drivers get token equity in that network. And there's a bunch of others like that. For example, GPU rendering for AI. Even there's cloud gaming, cloud servers, CDNs, things like this. And then, of course, the other big one is going to be the boring but obvious one, which is stablecoins, right? So Bridge just got acquired for $1.1 billion by Stripe. They're actually one of our customers. And turns out when you make the chain very efficient for trading meme coins, stablecoins are just meme coins without the speculative asset, and they're actually real assets. And so payments, DePIN, stablecoins, but also things like RWAs. A lot of institutionals are now coming on chain. You might have seen at Breakpoint, Franklin Templeton, Van Eck, Tokenize, which is the main issuer for BlackRock. And so we'll see
it's
where it goes.
It's kind of interesting, like to hear you talk about it. It's sort of like you have the speculation, and that it's kind of like the Olympics, where every 4 years a city has to spend a ton of money building infrastructure, and then that can be used for other things. So you have all this meme coin infrastructure, but then like stable coins can use it, everybody else can use it, and in that sense, having that speculation ends up building foundation blocks that scale the blockchain and bring the money needed for investment. I mean, we recently saw Pudgy Penguins announcing they're going to launch a meme coin as like such a big brand, especially an Ethereum brand. They announced it's actually going to be on Solana, which I think shook a lot of feathers and raised a lot of eyebrows. Any thoughts on that? Is that kind of a display of Solana's UX, or like the liquidity advantage at this point, or the cultural advantage? How do you interpret it?
Well, so I've known Luca for a while, and Luca is very pragmatic, right? They even have plushies that are sold at retail stores. And so he goes to where the users are, and he designs for the user in mind. And it turns out that the meme coin users, currently at least, are on Solana. And so that's where it makes sense to bridge those communities together, because he also has his own chain with Abstract. And I think people don't try this enough, where they try to unify different groups together. And so I think it's very commendable that that's their attempt, and I think they will succeed. And I'm very excited because I always wanted a penguin, but I never had enough patience to bridge over and try to download MetaMask and all that. So I'm very excited to see it, and I'm waiting for my honoraries still. So I'll be rocking the penguin.
I mean, the good thing is most of the penguins are already bald, so you don't have to worry too much about shaping the penguin. There's like the one with a bandana, maybe, like something. Obviously, Solana's kind of in this enviable position now. They're getting these big launches, these big founders that are coming in and building their culture there. There's a lot of Solana killers out there. They're trying to be Solana killers. I would say right now, Sui seems to getting the most momentum out of them, but there's several. There's new ones coming. Every month there's a new chain that's doing a big launch. We have Barrett Chain and Monad, everything else launching, and they all claim to have very high TPS, low cost. You could even say that L2s at this point have successfully created low, quick transactions. How does Solana over the next 1, 2, 3 years continue to keep an advantage? Is it the developer connections there, or is it the tech? Like, what do you think is gonna win?
Yeah, so I am an investor in Monad, Barrett Chain, and a few teams on Sui. So I do certainly like them, because we're all about performance and actually making crypto usable at scale. I personally welcome it, and I'm quite excited for it, because the alternative is these chains don't exist, and we just assume that Solana is the best, and we sit on our high horses, and we say, yeah, we're super fast, and we are in an echo chamber where we reinforce this, versus the much more preferable option, which is there are actual legit competitors who are also trying to push the boundaries forward, ship fast, with scalable transactions, cheap transactions, and a focus on UX. And then the only way to win is to compete and keep improving and keep pushing it forward. And so that's a much more...
But is it going to be competing on technology or on ecosystem, network effects?
Yeah. So I think fundamentally, if you zoom out, let's say 5, 6 years, I think most blockchains start to end up looking very similar. Currently, Solana is the fastest, but I think within 5 to 6 years, all of them will be reasonably fast, reasonably cheap. It's open source software, so you can mix and match different stacks. And so I don't think it'll be tech in the end game that's a differentiator. I think it's quite similar to cities, right? Where Dubai is successful to the extent where it can attract expats, successful expats, high quality people. Same with Silicon Valley. They're successful to the extent they can attract startup founders that are ambitious, Wall Street, the finance types. And so as a blockchain, you need to decide, first of all, who your target market is. Is it founders? Is it, meme coin traders? Is it institutional types? And once you do that, it's about how are you the best place for those people to go to for when they want to build their business on chain. So I believe that's basically the only differentiator in the end game, and that comes through a combination of tech, of course, but also founder support, ecosystem support, venture capital ecosystem, regulation, how decentralized is it, security, things like this.
And it feels like a lot of it also is kind of getting the right meta timing right. I mean, obviously Pump Fund, some of these Jupiter, some of these apps have been Solana based in this cycle. Meanwhile, in the next cycle or even like the next couple of years, I mean, I have AI to the left of me, I have gaming to the right of me. Some of these things might start becoming very big. You mentioned RWAs. Obviously, like this region and Abu Dhabi are very focused on real world asset aspect. Is Solana strategically positioning to all of these, or is it just see if the founders come here? Like something like AI, we're already seeing a lot of interest, a lot of agents being built. What do you think it's going to take? Is it going to be like attracting the founders with grants, or how is it going to get done?
Yeah, so Solana has this thesis called the FAT thesis, which is a play on words on the FAT protocol or app thesis. And basically it stands for founders, apps, and tokens. And so the focus is always on founders, those who are actually building startups and who have crazy ideas that want to bring it to life. And we have incubators, accelerators, the biggest hackathons in all of crypto, and a lot of early stage funds dedicated to accelerating specifically founders. And then founders, of course, lead to apps, which then lead to tokens. So that's the main focus, and those founders can be from any industry. They can be from RWAs. Somebody just started tokenizing uranium and it's trading. There's already agriculture trading, corn. I believe somebody even attempted onion futures, which is an interesting story because onion futures are actually illegal in the US. I'll tell that story another day. But there is no specific focus on any of these. Perhaps the loudest one right now is stablecoins, right? I was paying my due mobile bill, and I saw it pay with cryptocurrency, and you could pay with Solana, for example. So that's pretty cool. But and on the grant side, Solana's always been very different than most chains, where Anatoly, the way he says it is, we don't pay people to use the chain, they pay us to use the chain, which is if you build something that's useful such that their business is only possible on this chain, that's kind of where you want to end up. Some grants, obviously, for open source development and public goods and things like this are necessary, but in general, they don't have a big grant structure.
We have just about a minute left. I want to ask you, I have seen that there are some Mert meme coins. Now, obviously, like, this is a speculative asset. Do you feel like this type of asset where you have Elon coins and big personality coins, squirrel coins, how long will this last? Like, do you think that this is this cycle thing, or is this like a multi-cycle game at this point? And any guesses?
It's a good question. Well, first, speculation never will go away.
Never will go away.
So if you start with that thesis, then you look at what's the easiest way to speculate. It used to be NFTs, but it turns out NFTs are actually not so easy to speculate with, which is why it went from something like an OpenSea model to Blur, where it ended up basically looking like tokens with pictures. And that's basically the next iteration of this. I actually think of it, the multi-coin guy said it well, Tushar and Kyle, which is it might be possible that this is what Web3 native gaming looks like, where you have a bunch of kids, or not. I mean, I think my dad trades some of these, and my friends bought Mert. I'm not going to name the specific one, but it's basically they know the game they're playing, and it's like they're in their group chats, and they're like, okay, will this go up? Will this go down? I out-traded you. And so it's... Everybody thought that Web3 gaming would look like something like Assassin's Creed or FIFA, but perhaps with an in-game economy, or Fortnite where you can trade the skins. And that's probably... That'll probably still happen. But perhaps real Web3 gaming is the PvP trading of coins against friends and things like this on funny named coins.
Yeah. I think we're out of time. Congrats again for, plowing through the bear market and being in this incredible spot right now. And yeah, thanks for teaching us about everything going on in Solana.
Thank you.